in. And let's talk about those results with Mark Paustenbach, who's joining us via telephone. He's the Senior Vice President at ROKK Solutions. He's also, of course, the former Deputy Communications Director and National Press Secretary to the Democratic National Committee and the Rick Davis, Bloomberg contributor, campaign manager to the late, great Senator John McCain. Mark, I'll start with you since you're joining us via telephone. I mean, Florida is such a dominant state in terms of a path to the White House, Mark. At what point does the math get tricky for Senator Bernie Sanders to continue onward?
That's a great question, Kevin. Right now I think the primary is effectively over. As you said, the delegate math makes it clear that this is a done deal. The significant majority of the delegates moving forward, Bernie Sanders would have to win in order to capture the nomination. Unfortunately, Joe Biden is projected to win every state going forward that has, a major delegate haul.
I think that's a great point, Rick. We just had a technical glitch. We apologize for that. But, Rick, what point does the math get more difficult for Senator Sanders?
Not right now. I mean, I think Mark is correct. As of tonight, Biden, if he wins out, which is what is expected tonight, he could have over a 300 delegate advantage, which with the Democratic rules is almost impossible to make up. And I would say, too, this election is frozen. I mean, the coronavirus has stopped any dialogue that would create a change in this race. And the good news for Vice President Biden is it was frozen in his advantage.
Is it frozen in his advantage, Mark? Is that your consensus as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at the momentum that Joe Biden has really acquired over the past couple of contests. I mean, you look at this most recent contest in Washington State, for example, Bernie Sanders won last time in a landslide. He's not winning states that he won last time. He's really been unable to grow his base. He's really not been able to get above 33% or so, and that would have worked if the field was much bigger, if the moderate wing of the party was split up. But unfortunately, it's coalesced around Joe Biden, and Senator Sanders finds himself in a tough spot right now.
If you were advising a presidential campaign, Rick, take off partisan hats for a second, but think back to when you worked with Senator John McCain. I remember in 2008 when he suspended his presidential campaign to come back to Washington to grapple with the economic disaster.
Right.
Should Biden and Sanders do the same thing?
Well, I think the party should really address it too, right? I mean, they are the combatants, but the rules are set by the party. And they are supposed to be the arbiter of the playground. And so the party really ought to be in this game and say, look, what we're exposing people to, the risks that we're exposing to, especially now where the party could actually say it's a foregone conclusion after tonight that Joe Biden's going to be the nominee of the party. And they can change the timetable and what happens going forward to alleviate some of the pressure that's on people to have to participate in this election.
I know he was a general election nominee, but, I mean, John McCain wasn't waiting for the party to tell him what to do.
No, John McCain took a stand and said, look, I'm going to suspend my campaign. I'm going to go back to Washington. Nobody wants to have a candidate in Washington during a presidential campaign. And he put the economic vitality of the country ahead of his own political ambitions.
Mark, so you hear that, and my question to you would be, do you think it's time that Biden and Sanders come together and with DNC Chairman Tom Perez or with each other even and kind of come up with a consensus plan as the nation continues to grapple with this pandemic?
I think that, the party, I think, is pretty well united on this front in terms of trying to come up with policies that make sense. And I think that you're seeing this, sort of difference in the way people view this situation. Right now, they're questioning a little bit, President Trump's leadership on this, and I think they're looking to Democrats. But I also think, it's really important that the party come together behind a plan that's going to help our country right now. We're at a historic moment. We've never faced anything like this, and I think it's important that they do that.
Do you think that that eventually every primary is going to be delayed? Do you think we're going to have to start talking, Mark, about conventions being delayed or conventions being impacted? I mean, what are you hearing from your sources at the DNC?
I think it's still really early. I think they're taking things one at a time. You obviously have different states and different governors reacting different ways. Governor DeWine, for example, having postponed the primary, or I should say, making this a public health issue and pushing off the primary a couple more weeks was a decision that he made. And I think every governor is going to make a different decision based on what's happening on the ground. So I think it's a little too early to tell right now what's going to happen.
In the minute that we have left, how would you even advise your campaign, Rick, to keep moving forward? I mean, you can't have a get out the vote effort. You can't have folks knocking on doors. To ask for money at a time like this.
You can't have a rally. Is campaigning even appropriate, right? And I think after the debate on Sunday, we realized we're not going to learn anything new at a debate, so why have those things? So really, it's a campaign where I think if I were advising the Biden camp or even the Sanders camp, I'd say, you know what? Lend whatever assistance you can to the effort to try and galvanize the nation to proper behavior around a pandemic and let the chips fall where they may.
And where do you think that moment will be?
Well, I think for Sanders, it's going to be in the United States Senate. He announced earlier tonight that he's going to stay in Washington and he's going to try and get some of his proposals into this big bailout package that's going through the Senate right now. And I think Joe Biden, because he has a great megaphone and is seen and respected around the country and, frankly, around the world, needs to make his voice known in order to help stabilize the situation.
And I just heard a headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal that Joe Biden has now won the Illinois primary. Joe Biden, in addition to winning Florida, has also, breaking news, just won the Illinois primary. I want to thank Mark Paustenbach, Senior Vice President at ROKK Solutions, and, of course, the former Deputy National Communications Director for the Democratic National Committee, and, of course, Rick Davis, a Bloomberg contributor and former campaign manager to Senator John McCain.